Southwest Power Pool is the cream colored area, is that right?
Yeah, I think the entire state of Nebraska should be shaded there.
Is that, oh, that was my question. Should it
Well,
all be shaded or not? Because I know it's, the Panhandle's served by different generators.
Yeah, well, it's probably the area that the Western Area Power Administration serves.
Tri-state.
Tri-state serves out there, and they're not part of the SPP yet.
So development in that area potentially could just go directly to the Western Grid through Tri-State or some other generator.
Yes,
Would you,
it could.
Is from going from the Southwest Power Pool, you know, in the purple, to where you have the JCSP, what's that stand for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's that stand for?
It's a joint coordinated system plan.
Is there, I mean, is it a high hurdle to be able to get that energy from one power pool to another? I mean, how's that work between the systems? I mean, what kind of difficulties would you guys have being able to do that?
If you're talking about building like from here over
Yeah,
to here,
yeah,
there's going to be a lot of hurdles.
yeah. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, a lot of hurdles. Just anywhere from, let's just, I'll pick on Illinois here. We show the line as going straight through Illinois without making any stops. Okay, are we going to be able to get approval to go through Illinois from the Illinois Commission to where there's no benefit for the people in Illinois? You know, that's when you get into your individual state approvals for building transmission line. Are the people in Illinois going to help pay for this line? So how are you going to tell somebody in Illinois to help pay for this line when there isn't any stop-off point or there's no delivery to those customers? So those are the kind of issues that when you look at from a state-by-state basis, it's going to be very difficult to build large transmission lines. And that's one of the things why SPP is looking at promoting some type of national policy to help address these issues if we're truly going to move to having renewables developed in the areas where they're most efficient. How
much what would be the price tag on that? Is that a $30 billion price tag? That's got to be significant.
Oh yeah, it's billions of dollars.
But well over 30 billion, because that's what I'm seeing is kind of the breakdown for the transmission super highway, you know, based on the stimulus. Yeah,
the 30 billion includes quite a bit. What we're showing here, just an eastern interconnection, yeah, I don't have an idea what that would run if you just look at those lines, but it'd be many billions. We're looking at several billion just to do the SPP part, and it'd be many more to do these long transmission lines because it gets more and more expensive as you get into the more populated areas. Okay, just kind of a wrap-up slide. You know, the transmission planning allows for increased generation capacity. It allows us to handle increased loading as we continue to increase electricity usage, and it allows for long-term transactions for the grid. Just a couple other things on the transmission planning process. This is facilitated through the Regional Transmission Organization through SPP. We facilitate an open process, so all the members of SPP get to participate. It's really an open process, so even if you're just a user of the transmission system but not a member of SPP, let's just say you're municipal. I know we have lots of municipals in Kansas, for example, that are not members of SPP, but certainly use the grid, and they can participate in this planning process as well. So it's an open dialogue on the transmission design for the future. And we use that stakeholder feedback to develop the best transmission plan that we can, recognizing the needs of the different stakeholders. And this is kind of our independence through diversity model that we have, where we take all that input and develop independence, recognizing the diverse interests of the different stakeholders. We end up with two types of upgrades that I'll briefly mention on our board. One is reliability upgrades. and those are transmission upgrades that are needed to serve the load reliably. And those upgrades, if they've been deemed for reliability, those are funded differently, where we have a cost allocation in the SPP that's been approved by the Regional State Committee that allows 1/3 of that cost to be shared by everybody. 2/3 of that cost is served or paid for by the utilities in the local area that get the benefit. And we have a way to calculate that. So we do these studies that determine what transmission is needed for reliability and then share the cost. For economic upgrades, we do have some voluntary economic upgrades. And one thing that we've recently added is what we call a balanced portfolio. And this looks at the generation in the SPP, determines where we have congestion, and proposes transmission projects that reduce that congestion, improve the economics. But one of the stipulations there is that we have to make sure that we don't have anybody that's harmed. So we essentially evaluate that to make sure that everybody in the system benefits from those facilities. Okay, I've got a couple slides on wind development. The area that SPP has been called the Saudi Arabia of wind. Just a huge potential for wind development in the SPP footprint. I've got a 90,000 megawatt potential, and where that comes from is there is an Eastern Wind Integration Study that evaluated what a 20% renewable standard in the Eastern Interconnection would look like. And if you took the optimum resources, that would mean that 90,000 megawatts would need to be in the SPP. That is a lot of wind. A lot of wind. When you think about right now, we have 2,000 megawatts of wind in SPP, so we've got a huge potential. Right now, SPP has a request in our generation interconnection queue for 50,000 megawatts. So even though 90,000 is huge, we've got a lot of wind that's proposed. Certainly there's a lot of challenges to wind development. Wind is variable, it's non-dispatchable, so we have to have, it has to be supplemented with things that we have more control over, units that we can direct the operation of it rather than following the wind. Wind is, for the most part, in remote areas. That means that we're going to need new transmission lines because we don't have a lot of transmission lines in the remote areas. We just don't have any load there. When you get into just some of the basic issues on any transmission line, which is the not in my backyard, how do you get through those siting issues? Illicit seams agreements, with systems outside of SPP. If we're going to go to neighboring systems, how do we share in the cost of transmission facilities that are going to go outside of SPP? To deliver the power outside of SPP, we need to build extra transmission lines to serve that within the footprint. So those are things that are important. And then, of course, renewable portfolio standards. If you have a renewable portfolio standard that says that 20% of your energy, for example, should be from renewable resources, how much of that's going to come from in your state versus out of state that has a much more efficient area? Just maybe some talking points and things to initiate discussion on Nebraska. Generation. If you look at generation, Nebraska is going to continue to need to add generation. It's not like we've got all the generation that we need forever here. You're going to have to continue to add. Coal, nuclear, the fossil units are hard to get permitted anywhere. It's getting harder and harder. If you want to look at wind, could be part of the mix up to 20%. Good news is Nebraska has a good wind resources, so it's possible to build wind here, but you're still going to have the other generation resources to either be able to generate when the wind's not blowing or to be able to help track and follow the load. Also, Nebraska is definitely good enough where it can be an exporter of wind, where it'll have the availability to build excess wind to generate, to serve outside of the state. So how do you work through those issues in building excess generation to serve outside of the state? And that kind of rolls into the transmission, which is your transmission system has traditionally been designed to serve